In the vast reaches of the galaxy, beyond countless star clusters and nebulae, lay the Galactic academic Nexus, an elite interstellar school known for gathering the brightest minds from all known worlds. It was here, in one of the marble-floored hallways that gleamed with holographic displays of swirling cosmic patterns, that a single human student, Lily Carter, walked toward her advanced intergalactic mathematics class. Lily was just 16 but already carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed rare among her peers. Her short, cropped, dark hair framed her intense eyes, always filled with a curious sparkle, reflecting her fascination with the universe around her. She'd been admitted to the Nexus on a scholarship that honored human ingenuity, a fact that earned her both respect and, at times, resentment from her alien classmates. Today, as she stepped into the expansive, oval-shaped classroom, she noticed the usual gathering of students settling into their seats. Each row ascended in a tiered, circular formation around a central platform, where a grand digital board hovered in midair, displaying today's lesson topic: quantum variational theory and predictive temporal calculations. The title alone was enough to make Lily's heart race with excitement. But there was something unusual about today's lesson. Professor Thrix was waiting in the center of the room, his gleaming, scaled figure towering over the other students. Thrix belonged to the Axalnari, a race known for their exceptional intelligence and intimidating physical presence. Standing at nearly 7 feet tall, his multi-layered scales shimmered in tones of iridescent blue and violet, his multiple eyes scanning the room with an expression of both authority and mild impatience. Lily took her seat, subtly glancing around. She could feel the anticipation in the room. Whispers floated through the air as students exchanged glances and pointed to the complex array of equations and holographic diagrams that covered the digital board. Thrix finally began the class, his voice resonating deeply. Today we will tackle an advanced concept, a problem that none of you have solved before. His eyes swept the room, lingering a bit too long on Lily. She noticed his gaze but kept her expression calm, though she felt a flicker of apprehension. She knew he had been skeptical of her presence from the beginning. Thrix was known for his high standards, and despite her achievements, she could tell he viewed humans as generally inferior to most other species. The professor continued, activating a set of holographic projections that filled the air above them with intricate mathematical symbols and diagrams. Lily watched as her classmates, aliens of all shapes and colors, nervously murmured to each other, some of their bioluminescent features dimming with anxiety. There were students from nearly every advanced species in the galaxy, towering options with their crystal-like skin, the delicate Zillions with their silken frills, and the Gorons, whose multiple arms gave them an edge in rapid calculations. Thrix's gaze shifted back to the board, his many eyes glinting with an almost mischievous challenge. Today's equation, he announced, is one of the most complex predictive calculations used in interstellar navigation, a quantum variational problem that requires the utmost precision. You may attempt it, but I doubt many of you will succeed. Lily's mind sparked with excitement. She had always been drawn to the mysteries of space and its underlying mathematics. It wasn't that she had mastered every subject, far from it, but she thrived on the thrill of problem-solving, of finding patterns in chaos. Her classmates began tentatively copying down the equation, each of them focused, yet some already looking defeated. But Lily took a different approach. She observed the symbols, recognizing a pattern in the chaos, a set of sequences that resembled certain human principles in theoretical physics. Her thoughts raced, her fingers twitching with the urge to start, but she reminded herself to stay calm and observant. She needed to fully grasp Thrix's intentions before she acted. Then, Thrix's voice cut through the air, breaking her concentration. "Miss Carter," he announced, gesturing to her with one of his elongated, clawed hands, "why don't you come up and demonstrate your understanding of the problem?" Lily felt her heart skip a beat. The other students turned to look at her with a mix of intrigue and skepticism. Thrix's tone was calm but carried a subtle challenge, as though he were setting a trap. She could almost hear the unsaid words in his request: "Prove to me that you belong here." With steady steps, she rose from her seat and approached the digital board, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes on her. The projections around the board swirled with mathematical elegance, a three-dimensional matrix of formulas and theoretical pathways that were both beautiful and intimidating. Thrix stood slightly to the side, observing her with his many eyes, an unreadable expression on his scaled face. "Go ahead," he said simply. Lily took a deep breath, letting her mind absorb the complexity before her. She considered the equation, analyzing its structure, and realized that it wasn't just one calculation but a series of interconnected layers of three-dimensional model of quantum probabilities. And while the traditional solution would involve unraveling each layer sequentially, she saw a pattern that allowed her to approach it from an entirely different perspective, combining steps in a way that was both time-efficient and accurate. Her hand moved to the control panel beneath the board, and with a flick of her wrist, she adjusted the digital interface. She began working through the problem, her movements quick and decisive. Each symbol she entered resonated with a distinct sound, a soft chime that filled the silent room. She knew Thrix was watching closely, and she could feel a mix of doubt and fascination from the students behind her. As she progressed, she heard a murmur ripple through the class. She ignored it, staying focused. Thrix, she noticed, had shifted slightly closer, his gaze now intense and unblinking. Lily could sense his skepticism melting into something more like curiosity. Minutes ticked by, and her approach became clear to everyone. She was solving the problem in layers, using a technique that blended human pattern recognition with advanced alien mathematical principles. She could feel her own excitement rising as she saw the solution forming in her mind, each piece falling into place like a puzzle. Finally, she reached the last sequence. With a final, decisive input, the equation stabilized, and the projection blinked in acknowledgement the solution had been accepted. Lily stepped back, breathing deeply, her heart racing as she looked at her answer, glowing proudly in front of her. The silence in the room was profound. For a moment, no one spoke, as though the air had been sucked from the room. Lily turned slowly to face her professor, her expression calm but her eyes alight with quiet pride. Thrix's many eyes fixed on her, and she saw an unmistakable flicker of surprise in his gaze. "Well done," he said finally, his voice even but edged with something new, a faint trace of respect. "An unconventional method, Miss Carter, but it appears to be effective." As she returned to her seat, she felt the weight of her classmates' astonished stares. Some looked at her with newfound admiration, others seemed annoyed, perhaps even threatened. But Lily didn't mind. For the first time, she felt that she truly belonged among these brilliant, strange minds from across the galaxy. She had proven herself not just as a human, but as a student of the Nexus. In her mind, she replayed the moment on the board, a small smile forming on her lips as she looked forward to the next challenge. Lily's first triumph in Professor Thrix's class had sent ripples through the halls of the Galactic academic Nexus. A human student outshining a classroom of alien prodigies was unheard of, especially in a subject as advanced as quantum variational theory. The whispers grew louder in the following days, traveling beyond her own class. It wasn't long before students from other disciplines had heard about the human girl's success. Lily, however, tried her best to stay focused. She wasn't interested in fame or proving herself to others. Her true passion lay in the challenges of discovery. But her newfound reputation came with a price. Some classmates treated her differently. A few began avoiding her, while others seemed resentful. Still, some were genuinely intrigued, asking her questions between classes and inviting her to study sessions. Lily felt as though she were walking a thin line, trying to find her place in this vast alien academic world. One of her only constants in this changing environment was Professor Thrix. Despite his initial skepticism, he had started calling on her in class more frequently, though always with a probing look, as if he were testing her. Lily couldn't help but notice that his questions were becoming more challenging, pushing her beyond the usual syllabus. She wondered if he was trying to see just how far her skills could stretch, or if he was waiting for her to fail. The opportunity to explore this boundary came soon. Thrix had recently announced a unique project that would test each student's capacity for independent thinking. They were to solve a quantum probability cascade, an elaborate mathematical model with applications in interstellar navigation and temporal studies. This project would span several weeks, and students were expected to work alone. It was one of the Nexus's most difficult assignments, reserved only for the brightest students. The project required each student to submit their unique approach to solving the cascade, emphasizing their original thought process and techniques. While Lily felt the challenge suited her strengths, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more lay beneath the surface. Thrix's expression had been intense as he described the project, as though he were daring them all to take the assignment seriously. That evening, Lily found herself at the Nexus Library, a towering repository of knowledge from across the galaxy. Enormous pillars of shimmering light filled the central hall, each beam connected to one of the library's virtual archives. Students of all species sat in quiet alcoves, focused intently on holographic displays or studying exotic alien texts. Lily selected a private booth and settled into a smooth, rounded seat that adjusted itself automatically to her form. Taking a deep breath, she activated her display, and the assignment details appeared in the air before her, projected in clear holographic script. She was determined to approach the problem from a human perspective, believing that her unconventional methods might uncover a solution different from the traditional Zalnari calculations. But as she read through the cascade specifications, she realized just how complex this model was. It stretched far beyond anything she'd tackled before. Over the next few days, Lily became engrossed in the project, poring over alien texts, watching archived lectures, and attempting various calculation techniques. Yet, each attempt seemed to lead her into the same dead ends. The problem wasn't just about solving a single equation, it involved predicting outcomes across multiple realities, accounting for variations that spanned entire timelines. No matter how many times she worked through the calculations, the numbers refused to align. Then, just as she felt herself nearing the brink of frustration, a peculiar discovery changed everything. During a particularly late evening in the library, Lily stumbled upon an obscure text hidden deep within the archives. It was a Zalnari treatise on temporal harmonization, an advanced concept in predictive mathematics that few students had the skill to understand. Intrigued, she opened the file and began to read. The text was challenging, filled with dense equations and alien terminology she struggled to interpret. But there was one particular section that caught her eye. It described a mathematical phenomenon called the unity cascade, a complex process by which multiple quantum realities could align, briefly creating a singular outcome. The text hinted that this process could be used to solve problems that seemed unsolvable by conventional means. Her heart raced as she absorbed this concept. If she could find a way to incorporate the unity cascade into her model, she might be able to unlock the solution to the quantum probability cascade. But as she read further, she realized the technique required a precise manipulation of variables and an almost intuitive understanding of quantum harmonics. It would be risky, and if she failed, her entire project could collapse. Determined to try, she copied the key formulas from the treatise and returned to her own calculations. For the next several days, she hardly saw anyone outside of class, her life revolving around the project. She tested each equation, balancing the cascade with as much precision as possible, experimenting with the unity cascade concept and adjusting variables one by one. As she continued, she became more aware of how closely Professor Thrix was monitoring her progress. She often found him observing her from a distance, his many eyes watchful but unreadable. Once he even approached her during a study period, his towering figure casting a shadow over her desk. "Miss Carter," he said in a low, measured tone, "I see you are working on a rather unconventional solution." Lily looked up, meeting his gaze with a steady expression. "I think it might work, Professor," she replied, though part of her felt the doubt creeping in. Thrix nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I admire your ambition, but remember precision is key. The unity cascade is not a theory to be taken lightly. Even the slightest miscalculation could unravel your entire model. Lily felt a surge of defiance at his words, though she kept it hidden. She was determined to prove herself, not just to him but to herself as well. After all, this was what she loved about mathematics: the thrill of the unknown, the rush of pushing beyond established boundaries. As days turned into weeks, her calculations slowly began to align, each variable falling into place with careful adjustment. But just when she thought she was nearing the solution, disaster struck. One of the final sequences refused to stabilize, sending a ripple effect through the entire model. Numbers that had once lined up perfectly now fell into disarray, cascading into a chaotic storm of probabilities that no equation could fix. Frustrated, Lily stepped back, breathing heavily as she stared at the holographic display. Her entire project seemed to be on the brink of collapse, every formula unraveling before her eyes. She'd come so close, but it was as if the cascade itself resisted her touch, unwilling to submit to a human mind. Then, just as she was about to give up, she remembered something her father had once told her sometimes. The most complex problems can only be solved by looking at them from a different angle. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, trying to see the problem from a new perspective. Slowly, she realized that her approach had been too rigid, too focused on aligning each equation individually. The unity cascade required not just precision but harmony, a balance between variables that went beyond mere calculation. She began to adjust her approach, relaxing her grip on each variable, letting them flow naturally instead of forcing them into place. Hours passed, and gradually the cascade began to stabilize. This time, instead of individual variables, she worked with the entire model as a single entity, guiding it into alignment. Her display glowed with a soft, pulsating light, each equation falling into place as though it had been waiting for her all along. Finally, with one last adjustment, the cascade resolved, forming a single, stable outcome. Lily stared at her solution in disbelief, a feeling of triumph washing over her. She had done it. She had solved the quantum probability cascade using the unity cascade, a concept that few Zalnari students dared to attempt. As she saved her work and prepared to submit it, she noticed Professor Thrix standing nearby, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. There was a hint of respect in his gaze, but also something more, something that felt almost like pride. "Well done, Miss Carter," he said softly. "You've done what few have managed." Lily nodded, a quiet smile on her lips. She had proven to herself, and to her professor, that her place at the Nexus was well-deserved. Yet, in the depths of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that this project had only been the beginning, that the true challenge lay ahead, waiting for her to uncover it. After weeks of pouring every ounce of her energy into solving the quantum probability cascade, Lily was finally ready to present her findings. Her project was completed, each equation flowing smoothly into the next, like a symphony of numbers and variables woven together. She felt a rare sense of peace as she saved her final work, a feeling that her efforts had coalesced into something profound. The day of the presentations arrived, and the atmosphere in the Nexus was thick with anticipation. This was no ordinary event. The Quantum Probability Cascade project was a rite of passage for the Nexus's brightest students, a test that set apart the true thinkers and innovators. Students whispered among themselves as they filed into the central auditorium, a vast, circular hall with tiered seats that rose up to the ceiling, forming an open dome that looked out onto the stars. Lily found herself seated among her classmates, her eyes fixed on the digital stage at the center, where a translucent projection screen hovered, ready to display each student's work. She could feel her heart beating faster with each passing second, anticipation and anxiety mixing in her veins. Professor Thrix was there, presiding over the event with his usual calm authority, but his gaze seemed sharper, more focused than usual. As the presentations began, students from various worlds showcased their approaches, each one unique, some creative, others brilliant in their precision. Lily listened intently, impressed by the talent around her, yet she couldn't help but feel a thrill of confidence. She knew her approach was unconventional, perhaps even radical by Zalnari standards, but she believed in its accuracy. Finally, it was her turn. Thrix's voice echoed through the auditorium. Miss Lily Carter, our human representative, will now present her solution to the quantum probability cascade. A murmur ran through the audience as Lily stood and made her way to the platform. She could feel dozens of alien eyes watching her, some curious, others skeptical. She took a deep breath, calming her nerves as she activated her presentation. The screen behind her illuminated, displaying her complex array of equations, with the final, harmonious solution shining at the center. She began her explanation, detailing her thought process, the challenges she faced, and her decision to integrate the unity cascade, a concept so advanced that few dared to approach it. She watched as her classmates' expressions shifted from curiosity to astonishment. Even Professor Thrix appeared to be following her every word. His many eyes narrowed with a mixture of interest and something she couldn't quite place. As you can see, Lily concluded, the unity cascade allowed for a harmonization of quantum variables, resulting in a single, stable solution to the probability cascade. It's unconventional, but it aligns with both human and Zalnari mathematical principles. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, to her surprise, a round of applause broke out. Lily looked around, catching the impressed gazes of several alien students. Even the most skeptical faces held a flicker of admiration. She couldn't help but smile, feeling a surge of pride in her accomplishment. But as the applause died down, Professor Thrix stepped forward, his gaze intense. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice calm but layered with a strange gravity, "your solution is indeed impressive. However, I must ask, did you fully understand the implications of the unity cascade?" Lily hesitated, caught off guard by his question. I believe so, Professor. The unity cascade creates a single stabilized outcome, one that harmonizes all variables." Thrix's many eyes seemed to pierce through her. "True, but it also binds these variables in a way that goes beyond simple mathematics. The unity cascade is a model used in advanced temporal manipulation. Your solution, impressive as it is, could theoretically align multiple timelines, merging them into a singular outcome." Lily's heart skipped a beat as she grasped the implications of his words. She hadn't considered the potential consequences of her calculations beyond the assignment. She had focused solely on solving the problem. But Thrix was suggesting that her solution might affect more than theoretical equations, that it could influence real-world timelines and realities. "Does this mean," she began, her voice faltering slightly, "that my solution could change things outside of the classroom?" Thrix nodded, his expression unreadable. "Precisely. This is why so few have attempted the unity cascade. The calculations may seem abstract, but when implemented, they have the power to alter outcomes across different realities." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. Had her solution truly wielded such power? She hadn't intended to tamper with reality itself, yet her approach had opened a doorway she hadn't foreseen. She looked at Thrix, trying to read his expression, but his face remained impassive, a calm mask that concealed any emotion. "But Professor," she said slowly, "how can mathematics have such an effect on reality?" Thrix's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time she sensed a trace of empathy. "Mathematics is the language of the universe, Miss Carter. When we manipulate equations, we are, in essence, manipulating the fabric of existence. The Nexus teaches us to be cautious because the power we wield is not just theoretical. The multiverse is a delicate structure, and even the smallest change can ripple across countless timelines." Lily felt the weight of his words settle over her. She had always loved mathematics for its beauty, its precision, but she had never imagined that her work could have such profound effects. She looked at her solution on the screen. The glowing cascade that had once seemed so elegant, now imbued with a sense of gravity and mystery. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thrix regarded her carefully. Now, you must decide what kind of mathematician you wish to be. Knowledge is power, and power demands responsibility. You have demonstrated exceptional skill, but you must also understand the consequences of your actions. This project was a test, not only of your intellect but of your wisdom. The auditorium fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Lily felt a surge of emotion, pride, fear, and a deep sense of responsibility. She had always yearned for knowledge, but now she saw that knowledge came with choices, with decisions that went beyond herself. As she descended from the platform, she noticed several students looking at her with newfound respect, others with awe. She took her seat, her mind spinning with thoughts of what Professor Thrix had said. The Unity cascade had been more than a simple solution, it was a window into the vast, interconnected fabric of reality. She had glimpsed a truth that few dared to see, and she knew that her journey at the Nexus was only beginning. After the presentation, as the students filed out of the auditorium, Thrix approached her, his expression softened. "You have potential, Miss Carter. Remember what you've learned today and use it wisely. The Nexus is a place of learning, but also a place of choices. You will face many in the years to come." She nodded, her heart swelling with determination. She had proven herself as a student, but now she understood that the true path of knowledge was one of responsibility, of using her skills not just for herself but for the greater good. As she walked back through the hallways of the Nexus, the stars visible through the transparent dome above, she felt a sense of clarity she had never known. Her future was uncertain, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine, but she was ready to face them. The quantum probability cascade had been her first test, but she knew it would not be her last. In the days that followed, Lily continued her studies with renewed focus, driven not only by curiosity but by a sense of purpose. She spent hours in the library, learning about the intricacies of the multiverse, the delicate balance of timelines, and the consequences of manipulating them. Thrix occasionally checked in on her, offering guidance when she needed it, but allowing her the space to find her own path. The Unity cascade had opened her eyes to a new realm of possibilities, one that stretched beyond the boundaries of the Nexus, beyond even the known galaxy. She had glimpsed the vastness of existence, and she was ready to explore it, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian of knowledge. For Lily Carter, the human girl who had once been seen as an outsider in the galactic academic Nexus, the future was filled with promise, and she was determined to face it with courage, wisdom, and a deep respect for the mysteries of the universe.